Very funny. I realize I have two number eights on this review, but we do the best we can. So after the second number eight, the last page is all calculator work. So we'll see what happens. If you do not have a calculator, you can't do these problems. You definitely want to make sure you got that going. So I prepared this one at least partially in advance. Very, very, very important when you set these problems up that you double check your numbers. I did in class the other day a problem where I accidentally had one number. I put a 5 instead of a 25 or something like that. And my numbers were all different. Everybody got confused. There's no way to know from the mathematics that you have just missed a number as you put them in there. So you have to be very careful. So I will recap real quick. The first thing you do on problems of this nature is you hit the stat button because these are statistics. You go to edit and then you type your numbers in. Now, if those numbers are over here, I'm going to go over here and somebody had some junk over here that you don't like, then you just go up to the top of that list and you hit clear. Don't ever hit the delete button, just hit clear and that'll clear the list, but it retains the ability to make that list. Deleting it will make the list go away. And then you got to learn how to get it back, which is a little harder. Just FYI. So once we have that stuff in, this is what you do in matrices. This is what you do here. This is how your calculator, you get your information in and then you have to quit. And then you're going to go back to that statistics and you're going to tell it to calculate your linear regression, number 4. Now, the way this works, if it's a test like this and all I'm asking you for is the equation and the coefficient, it doesn't even matter if you store it somewhere. I just usually do because I want to take a look and see if it makes sense. But I can just calculate it, and there's my value. I got negative 2.8597. Plus an intercept of 426.238. Now, the funny thing is I did that on purpose, remember, my input and my output, but I really wasn't talking about X's and Y's. I was talking about W's and F's. So I really should have F is negative 2.8597. W plus 426. This is the proper answer to that. And my correlation coefficient is R, which is negative 0.866. Now, what that actually tells me is this is a fairly good representation of the data. I mean, a B, like you could think of it like a B, 86%. Now, the fact that it's negative is because it was coming downhill. Now, 86.86 is actually fairly close to -1. In a scientific community, they would actually say this was great. I'll kind of go ahead and do that real quick and show you what it looks like. But if I turn my plots on and I do a zoom data, believe it or not, in a science class, they would actually say that's pretty good stuff. I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time. So I'm going to do my linreg again. But this time I'm going to store that to alpha trace y1. Now, it gave me that same data, but now when I go to Y, it actually put that in there. And you would probably think that doesn't look like a B, does it? But mathematically, it's pretty close. I got a few dots above, I got a few dots below. It's a pretty reasonable representation, but it wasn't great. So for 8B, I'm going to go ahead and tweak this. And so this is going to be one of those cases where all of a sudden my data is wrong. So let's go to Stat Edit. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to clear these lists because I don't like what I'm seeing. Those are not the data values I want. So I got my 3.8, I got my 5.9, I got my 7.2, and my 10.5, my 16, my 21.3, my 24. And over here, I got 10.6, 17.5, 12.1, 10.6, 6.5, 26.3, 22.1. Now, you might have guessed that there's something kind of weird about this. Now, how good do those data look if I was trying to tell you that was a lie? That doesn't look very linear, does it? But we're going to find out. So let's go to Stats. Let's go over to Calc. Let's do that linear regression. And let's, again, just alpha trace that to Y1. And let's calculate it. Now, again, I don't have the picture, but I have an equation that f equals, because remember, that's my y value, 0.528x plus 8.403, and my correlation coefficient is 0.585. Well, what that means is this is a poor representation. If you got that kind of grade, that would not be great. This is a poor representation. Oh, I got to spell representation of the data. That's not a good looking representation. In fact, if you look at it, that looks awful. That doesn't look like, I mean, granted, there's a couple above and a couple below, but the problem is if you look at it as I'm growing, these numbers are working, but all of a sudden this one dipped way down and this one jumped way the heck up. This doesn't seem like it has anything to do with that line. And that's kind of what happens. Now, my last one is my augmented matrix problem. And so if we are going to start by making this an augmented matrix, I would start by putting my x's here, y's here, and z's here, with my answer column over here, x, y, and z. There was no y, so I had to put a 0. My x, my y. This time there was no z. So that is going to be my augmented matrix. And so I need to come into my calculator and do that. So just like the previous problem, I'm going to go to matrix. I'm going to go to edit because I need to put it in. I need to tell it what size. This one is a 3 rows by 4 columns, so that's okay. And I'm going to put 3, 2, -2, and -10. Just making sure I have those numbers right. 3, 2, -2, and -10. I don't want to make a mistake. I've got a 4, a 0, a -1, and a 5. And then I have a 1, a 5, a 0, and a -23. So I've got my data in just like in the other one. As soon as I have my data in, I go ahead and quit. And now I go right back to that same place. I tell it to do some math. I actually wish they said calculate, but it doesn't. And the reason they're not saying calculate is because sometimes you're not calculating. Sometimes they're telling you to swap rows and things like that, which is not really a calculation. But we're going to find row reduce right here, RREF. And it's asking me which matrix, because there's all these matrices that I could choose from, but the one that I wanted was second matrix. I called it A, which was number 1. And when I do that, I got my row reduced echelon form. That's what I was looking for, which always should have zeros everywhere except for down the diagonal. And then I have the answers right there in that column, which leads me to my augmented matrix, my row reduced, and my summary statement right here is that x is 2, that y is -5, and then z is 3. And hopefully that is helpful. And I know if you don't have a calculator, it takes a little bit to remember all of that stuff, but hopefully it helps regardless. I will see you guys in class. Hopefully that was helpful. See you later.